Just a reminder that we will have our first Mass on Wednesday at 9 a.m., also in the evening at 7:30 p.m. We won't be having any devotions. The ideal is that we try to keep Mass as short as possible so people come in and out as quickly as possible, less chance of transmission of germs. So it's just a precautionary measure. The church is open today for prayer as well as tomorrow. Just from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, and in the evening from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Some people have been asking about the sign up for Sundays, and they're saying, well, I go to your website and I don't know how to sign up. I don't see anything. And the reason for that is we won't make that available until Thursday. So probably early morning Thursday, and you can start signing up for Sunday Mass at that time. If for some reason you don't have access to the internet, you can call the parish. You will need to specify which Mass you will be attending and whether your preference is to sit in the hall or in the church. In regards to today's gospel reading, there's quite a lot in there that we could talk about. And one of the things I wanted to address is how our Lord says, "Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you." And so sometimes people ask me, Father, I see people begging on the streets, and should I give? And we should always give something. Doesn't mean money. So often I pray for people. Sometimes I do give money. It's a judgment you have to make at that time. But basically what our Lord was referring to is there are people who are in need. And yes, we should absolutely help people who are in need. But there are also some people who are not in need, who are just taking advantage of your kindness, of your generosity. And there are some people, unfortunately, who, if we give them money, they will use it for things that's going to be very detrimental to them. So by giving them money in such cases, we're not really helping them. So we have to make that judgment at the time. Sometimes I give, sometimes I don't. I mean money. But what we can always give is kindness. So showing an interest in the person, telling them to have a nice day, but also praying for them. So often when I pass by people and I don't give, I will say a prayer for them. So by praying for them, we're already giving. And of course, many of you are very generous to Share Life and other charitable organizations. So this is also one of the ways in which we help the poor and the unfortunate. What I really wanted to focus on in today's gospel reading is how our Lord says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer." And here too, we need to clarify what our Lord is saying. Does this mean that we should put up with all kinds of abuse? The answer is no. So sometimes we have to put our foot down and say no. We do have to speak out against injustice, whether it's that injustice is being committed against us or others. But our Lord is basically saying that there are many instances where we can and we should forgive, and that we should actually be generous in forgiving. So sometimes even things that are pretty serious, that we should be willing to forgive. And why? Why is our Lord saying this? Well, first of all, this saying, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, this saying wasn't to justify that it's right to pay somebody back for the harm that they caused you. That's not what it was really getting at. It was kind of understood that everybody does this. It's kind of automatic. What this saying is that you cannot exceed the harm the person has done to you. In other words, if somebody punches me and knocks out one of my teeth, people felt they had a right to punch the person back and knock out one of their teeth. But what if you knocked out 3 of his teeth instead of just 1? So there was a problem. So it was really to limit what you can do. But the problem is that when we have this attitude, basically what happens is violence begets violence. And anger and hatred leads to greater anger and greater hatred. Think of little children who are playing, and one of them maybe accidentally hurts the other one, and the other one gets angry and, let's say, punches or hits the other one, and then the other one says, "Well, why did you do that?" and then punches him back, and then they just keep fighting, and before you know it, they're tearing each other apart. So we can see how violence begets violence. So the ideal is that we forgive, that we overlook faults. We all make mistakes. Sometimes we, act foolishly and do foolish things, but the hope is that people understand and are willing to forgive us, understanding that they are not perfect and understanding that we are not perfect. It's unfortunate. Recently, there's been a lot of riots and a lot of violence, actually, and innocent people are suffering on account of this. So yes, there was some injustice, and we do need to speak out against that injustice. But I read an article that 700 police officers have been injured because of this violence. One has been killed. Some of them have been seriously injured and are now in the hospital in serious condition. So violence begets violence. It's not good. And the problem when people act this way is, they're calling for respect and recognition and equality in many ways. But when they act this way, it actually causes people to look down upon them. So take, for example, the pro-life cause. So we protest abortion, but we do it in a peaceful manner. We have the life chain. It's silent, prayerful, peaceful witness to the truth. And it's also interesting that some of these pro-lifers, especially when they act on their own, a lot of them have been attacked. A lot of them have been punched. There was a young lady, I can't remember, I think it was just last year, she was kicked. And so violence is being committed against them, but they don't react with violence. They forgive. And in many ways, they are like martyrs because they're willing to suffer these things in order to promote the truth. And basically, this is what our Lord is saying. This is the kind of attitude that we should have, to forgive those who offend us, understanding that they don't understand. And also understanding that violence begets violence, and the only way we can put an end to that is by forgiving. So yes, we do need to speak out against injustice, but it needs to be done in a peaceful, respectful manner, just the same way that we undertake the pro-life causes, whether it's the March for Life in Ottawa or the Life Chain. So yes, let us speak out against injustice, and if a great injustice, and especially if it's ongoing, is being committed against us, we need to speak out against that. Sometimes we need to get help for that also. But there are many things that we can and do have the ability to forgive. And forgiveness is extremely important. Recall, there's many passages where our Lord says that unless we forgive, we cannot be forgiven. And this is a passage that is very similar to that. So when we forgive, we put an end to that violence that goes back and forth and just becomes more and more intensified as time goes on. So we put a stop to it by practicing true charity.